I will start with Christy. The slides, we have one. I will start showing you only 2 slides. We love slides. So this first one shows that the level of trust of the public in different category of professionals. So I don't know if you see the colors correctly, but the politicians are in yellow, orange, and the level of trust of the politicians, it's the lowest, yes? And real estate agents, this is what the public perceives. Yes, this graph goes from 1983 to the current days. So the next one, please. Yes, this is an interesting slide which comes from a recent study. The study was done this year. This data is from 2006, and this shows the level of trust between people in the same country, let's say, or the level of trust between each other and the subjects that are presented to them. And I don't know if it's readable, but our country is somewhere in the 20% area, which most of the Eastern European countries, it's in the same area. So seeing this, my first question to the panelists would be how technology can be used, or how technology is used today to influence the level of trust that the public has in democratic processes or in the politicians, and how this can be changed or improved through technology, please.
Wow. That's an easy question, right?
Just to start.
Just to warm things up. To me, technology, from my recent experience, is a communication tool. It's just another channel through which one can access the electorate. And it's a limited channel through which the electorate can answer back. Again, I speak from my personal experience. It could be that it's a very limited experience, and that a broader experience might change this opinion. But I don't see by any means technology as some sort of shining knight on a white horse that will come and fix our problems in terms of our political problems in any case. It allows for a more rapid crystallization of feedback, I think. It allows for, it makes it easier to bring together people in one place, to communicate ideas and to let's say guide people in one direction or another. But as I said yesterday, it's a tool, and I think politicians aren't very good at using it, but neither are we as the electorate. I think everything is still in its infancy in many ways. I'm not sure if I have a bit of the feeling that I'm rambling on, but...
No, we just had, these slides were meant to start a discussion, and so Vlad, please.
Is finally technology or the internet or the digital world helping us be more confident in politicians? No. God help us, no, because we shouldn't be confident in politicians. The role of the technology is to change the way that politicians act and react. And I think it's the most proficient pressure tool that we have to tell them that what they do is wrong. So basically, from what you can see, what you saw lately online, politicians are afraid of using, I don't know, the social networks, because they can be very easily attacked, because their flows are easily exposed, because the establishment, the mainstream, can be really easily be leveled, by the insurgents, if you want, or the underdogs. So yeah, technology, it's a great tool for people who question the status quo. It's not a great tool for, I don't know, established politicians, etc., because they don't really understand how it works. For example, and I'm gonna refer to the campaign that you participated in the campaign for Bucharest, let's say, former leader and the actual mayor of Bucharest, sorry guys, had the most followers, on Facebook, but in the meantime, she had the least interaction on Facebook, because they are not really fans. They are not really active people online. They are people who understand the internet as an entertainment medium. It's like TV for them. And of course, a TV politician is a perfect, offer for them online. On the other hand, less popular politician had higher and, I don't know, more meaningful degrees of interaction with the voters. This is one thing, that technology is changing the rules. The fact that you're popular doesn't mean that you're interacting with your audience. On the other hand, thinking about the Roșia Montană moment that changed basically the way that we use the internet to interact with politics, the moment when the whole country woke up actually and understood that, okay, you can put pressure on people, you can stop laws, you can stop projects that are basically destroying, your not only your country but also your self-esteem, was the moment when politicians were afraid to be on Facebook. They closed their pages, they stopped communicating for a period because it was an embargo from us. Everybody who tried to say something nice or in the usual way was trolled to death. And if you want to follow something right now and to have some fun, follow the PNL page, the National Liberal Party. It's a madhouse there, everything that they try to do, and they try to do pretty honorable stuff, and they try to help from time to time. It's ridiculous, man. The amount of rage and, humor, bad humor, good humor, that you get on the page, it's more entertaining than the TV show, so yeah. Click on it if you're on Facebook. Huh?
So my next question relates to your personal experience, both of you. Like Matei recently managed the campaign of Nicu Jordan for Bucharest, and Vlad managed the online presence and the online campaign for the presidential elections in 2014. So
sorry, guys.
So my question relates now to your personal experience in using the technology, meaning social media or other means that you used. What was how you perceived the impact of this of the technology in the democratic process in this way?
Facebook has the bad, taste of remind you what you did like 4 years ago. So I was scrolling through my post, and 4 years ago, I was posting something very revolutionary about going to the vote and voting Nicu Jordan. And I said right then, if we're more than 5%, we're winning already, because it's already a critical mass that's happening. So I think that the Nicu Jordan phenomenon was the beginning of, let's say, this phenomenon that cannot be stopped anymore, of the online power to the people. The next one was Uniți Salvăm Roșia Montană, where I had the chance to work in the communication team and, let's say, not learn, because you cannot learn a living organism. You can try to understand it. And then we had the chance to do the political campaign for Klaus Iohannis. The cool part was that we were allowed, nobody understood what we were doing, not even us, And the cool part that it was that it wasn't very scientific, it was trial and error. And we working like a startup through trial and error, you know, we had the chance to try everything out. So I think, yes, things are getting more and more professional. The last campaign that you have was more organized and, yeah, was it more organized?
Matei?
I
wasn't part of the first one, so I can't compare.
But this campaign for Nicușor, how did things happen online? It was planned, or it was, I don't know, over a good strategy that you applied, or did you improvise? Because we improvised the hell of it, you know?
I think it's impossible to not improvise. It's the name of the game. I mean, what we did is we identified a few messages and we just pumped the hell out of them. We had very limited resources in terms of time and money, and so I think that made it more difficult for us to use the full array that technology would normally have offered us in terms of segmentation, targeting, so on and so forth. It was because of the restrictions, again, of time and money. We ultimately, in the campaign, we spoke of the fact that we have a gun with a relatively small barrel. We have a lot of content, a lot of messages, but a thin barrel, and that made it difficult to really use the full extent of the internet. And had we had, I think, twice or three times the resources, I'm quite sure that Nicușor would actually have won. But with a thin barrel, you can only do so much. Having said that, I mean, to move a bit in a post campaign world, I remember waking up Monday after the campaign when there was a lot of confusion about our candidate for the first sector, Clotilde Armand. In the evening she had won, in the morning she was behind, but at that point she posted something, and within an hour she had, I think, 15,000 likes. We had never seen anything like that before, not on her site, not on Nicușor's site. And at that point we knew that things had changed. There was a moment of inflection, and I think campaigns need that moment of inflection, and unfortunately, I think our failure as a campaign, and we had plenty, but one of our failures was that we failed to hit that point of inflection during the campaign. Unfortunately, it happened right afterwards. And I'm sure, for example, and I'll end it in a minute, I'm sure that if we had the election again tomorrow, without a doubt, she would win, and without a doubt, Nicușor would win, because of what happened, I think, on Sunday. But it was almost, well, in fact, it turned out to be impossible for us to create what happened on that day, on Sunday. It was impossible for us to create that over the preceding 10 weeks.
I think that this is the most important lesson to be learned, because you don't own the internet. You can own television or a newspaper or whatever. You can put all the ads that you want. You can, I don't know, do the best message segmentation that you want. But you need this click, you know. And I think that actually losing, you won. You know?
We'll find out.
So this brings me to the next question, because one of the subjects in our panel is active citizenship. So considering the very low participation rate at these elections, it was around 30%, I think. Do you think if online voting would be allowed, what would be the participation rate? Do you think that it would increase? And if so, the related question, if you believe that this will change the political balance overall?
There's no doubt in my mind that the answer is a strong yes on both counts, which is precisely why it won't happen, not for a while. I mean, it's as simple as that. If you had the electronic vote, you wouldn't have the suspicion of theft, and you would clearly make everything far more accessible to your average voter. I'm not saying that the participation would go from 30 to 80%, but for sure it would have a significant positive impact on that. And it would, in fact, democratize the entire process.
I'm maybe democratize the entire process, but I'm not sure that it's gonna be necessarily fair. Because internet is not fair. Internet is not for everybody. Internet is not a democracy. It's a tyranny. It's the tyranny of the tech-wise. If you consider yourself, you know, I don't know, digital literate, if you're not a programmer, you're not. So basically, you don't own the internet. The people that write the algorithm, that make the user interface, that select the colors, that do the design experience, they are the owner of the internet. So right now, yes, we, let's say the younger generation, I'm not young anymore, but let's say the young generation does not feel represented in politics and does not participate in the political process. But imagine that, okay, we have the online voting, and the non-political, uneducated young generation starts participating to the vote. Maybe this will mean that we're gonna elect radicals. Maybe this means that we're gonna elect, I don't know, neoliberals that are gonna, I don't know, cut the pensions. Maybe, why not? Maybe this means that this change of balance would be bad, you know, for the older generation. Maybe it's gonna be revenge time, you know. It's like, okay, we're gonna show you right now, you know. And the fact that actually this rhetoric of against politics, against the old generation, against this I don't know, this contempt and this attitude towards the old people, okay, that express their I don't know, option in the vote, I don't think it's healthy for the Romanian society. And I think that maybe if electronic voting is going to be implemented without proper communication and education of all the participants in the electoral process, that this can, I don't know, maybe create social unrest.
So this brings the next question, which is, okay, technology is an enabler. It can help, okay, to increase participation, but also it has its limits. So what are the limits of the technology, in your view, in increasing this active citizenship? And how can you see it used the most, in the most efficient way and democratic way to improve this process?
Wow. I think I need some advisors, you know, on these questions, and maybe call MIT or maybe not MIT, maybe call, I don't know, India or somebody who's really investing into research and development and who's really investing into, I don't know, technology and innovation. I think it's a very powerful weapon, like you said before, but the way there are some people that are very skilled in using this weapon, and if we're not careful, if we don't have, let's say, a very ethical attitude toward it, you know, it can backfire easily. Because if you give right now, let's say, a loaded gun to a teenager, and I don't know, a six-pack, maybe some bad things are gonna happen, you know. Maybe, I'm just saying. And I'm not talking about a real teenager. I'm talking about the teenage society or a teenage, I don't know, political group, etc., etc. I had the chance to meet, and sorry, 30 seconds or 1 minute, I had a chance to meet with the guys from PACT, you know, the new party of the young people who studied abroad, etc., etc. They're really cool people, and they're well-intended, but they don't know squat about politics. They don't know if what they want to change, they want to do it in, I don't know, on the left or on the right. Okay, we want better education, but how do we do it? Do we try to help the children in the villages that don't stand a chance, you know, to compete with you, you know? Or are we gonna promote the Olympics that everybody's bragging about, you know? These are the differences, and this is what I'm saying, that maybe, you know, technology can, okay, maybe balance the game, but unbalance maybe the fragile social justice that we're enjoying right now.
Matei?
I think at the core, technology from a political perspective is two things. It's a communication channel, just like any other channel, just like TV, just like...
Sorry, I just, also from your recent 10-week experience,
Yeah.
how would you see it being used in a, increased participation, but also where are the limits to not overcome the balance and to keep the democratic rules as they are,
I don't see any problem with keeping the democratic balance or the democratic rules. I think on the contrary, if anything, there's a segment of the electorate that is captured by the TV channels. There's maybe another sector that's captured by the online segment. Our electorate wasn't really part of the TV segment, and vice versa. We simply fought on the terrain that was accessible to us. Had we had access to the TV sector, we would have been there as well, but we didn't. So I really don't see a problem in terms of creating social dissent and what have you. Right now, you have a huge segment of society which feels deeply disenfranchised. They are completely apolitical. And I think the reason for that isn't because of technology, it's because of the lack of content, the lack of authentic solutions. And I think that as these things begin to materialize, you will see technology lending a hand. Because to me, technology from a political perspective, as I started to say, is two things. It's just a means of communication with some feedback mechanisms, and it's also a good project management tool. It helps you organize things. At the core, that's all it is.
I'm gonna tell you, I have my, let's say, I think technology and the online medium has a lot of limits, because people do not, I don't know, congregate without leaders, micro leaders, informal leaders, I don't know, shamans, call them whatever you want, Things do not just happen, For example, the death of Unit Salvăm Roșia Montană was the moment that the deadline, and the common goal dissipated. It broke in, I don't know, 10 fractions, people started to use polls and try to be democratic and whatever, and it ended very badly, It was like worse than the Romanian parliament, the discussion group there, So right now, I don't think that necessarily the technology, and let's say the internet, because we're really thinking and talking about the internet when we're saying technology. And I think this is not a good idea, not necessarily a good idea. Because this is not what ties us up together. Has some limits, and the limits are mental, and there are limits based on our behaviors and what we expect from the internet and the online. And let's not forget the dark web. It's deeper than the visible web, and even the visible web, it's 90% porn, and then entertainment, and then, some more porn, and some email, and maybe there 2% news, and serious information. People don't want to get online to vote or decide for the sake of their country. They want to go online to have fun, or to unwind, or to connect, or to resolve the traumas, or their, I don't know, basic social needs that society don't let them, fulfill anymore,
To an extent, I think you're right, but at the same time, people watch TV for the same reasons, right? And at the same time, when you have debates, political debates, people watch those. You have huge viewership. And the viewership on the online channels also goes way up when you have that type of content. I mean, I think it's a feature of humanity to want to be entertained, and we are animals in that sense. But that's not to say that it can't have a huge role, I think, in our political life. But again, it's just a platform. Without content, it's nothing.
Let me just get back to the origin of my question, because we saw, I think, one of the lowest participation rates in the recent local elections. So, don't you believe that, including introduction of an e-participation process for different decisions at the local level or at the government level. Don't you think that, okay, maybe not through a very quick process, but a step-by-step process, don't you think this is in the direct interest of the citizens to have access to such a platform, to give way to new ideas, to start to promote, to work on different local goals or local problems that the citizens have in specific areas through the use of technology, to get knowledge from the community and to try to solve problems through this kind of platform? You see more threats than benefits from this?
I don't think people want to work, you know. They work to make their 200 euros, you know, in order to pay their bills and the school for their kids, you know. They go online, yeah, you put them to work again to solve the problem of the community. Why? Where's the reward? Politicians should do that, you know. I think that activists work, yes, for the community, but you cannot expect a country made of activists, because that's utopia, you know. And it's a utopia I don't want to live in, you know, because it's going to be unbearable to talk all the time about the good of the nation. In the meantime, to answer your question, I think we should have an integrated approach, you know, because if you're thinking only online, you know, Facebook or whatever platforms, I don't really believe in it. If you integrate it with, I don't know, a system of payment, big data, Internet of Things, etc., I don't know, interactive displays, interactive polls, but I mean the real world, you know, you vote for, I don't know, a decision when you buy your water or whatever. If you buy Aqua Carpatica, you decide for one candidate. If you buy coffee, you decide for I don't know what, you know. I'm kidding, but you understand what I'm meaning, you know. If we try to have, let's say, a more mature vision about how we should interact with technology and how we should make decisions, you know, I think things can happen. But let's be real, people have a limited amount of time that they want to spend thinking about serious stuff, you know.
I go back to the issue of content. I think that the low turnout was a direct result of a lack of content. Or if there was content, the dissemination of that content wasn't successfully enough. It wasn't disseminated enough, and that's why I think people stayed home.
Okay, I want to change a little bit now and want to address a question from the point of view of how technology is evolving and how the process is in the government and in the different government agencies and institutions, how they are working, and how can we create some kind of institutional designers that will adapt and redesign some governance processes in the government, in the local administration. So how do we create these people? So the current available technologies are more used in the day-to-day activity of these institutions, if this is realistic, and how do we get to this citizen-centric approach where the technologies that I'm using for banking or from other stuff that the citizens are used in their day-to-day life, it's not 20 years ahead of what the government is offering them. If there is any way of redesigning these processes, if you see a way to do it.
Okay, pressure is good, and it's always a good idea to keep the pressure on them and to remind them that they cannot do the things that they used to do, you know, unnoticed. So I think that this is starting to work already. Further than that, I worked in one ministry, and actually the reform is there. You know, it's on one table, on one hard drive, you know, forgotten, you know, in a specific folder, you know, that nobody wants to open anymore, you know. We have all the strategy that we need. We have all the free technology. We have all the, I don't know, civic-generated projects in order to make things better, you know. I have a friend of mine who's trying right now to access some European funds in order to redesign an institution from scrap, you know, from nothing, and around the way that it works, around the kind of people it attracts, etc., and try to rebuild it, you know. Will he succeed? Of course, because he's a very smart guy and he's an entrepreneur and he has the mind. Will the institution accept this? Never. You know? So I think maybe, I don't know, maybe I think we should all go and find the people that we know in the system and ask them if there are strategies available there, if we can help with the pressure in order to push them into the agenda, because the platforms are there, you know.
I think it really boils down to people and people being involved. We cannot wait or hope to see a particular ministry or government agency implement some sort of electronic device that will allow a more participative type of relationship. I was struck by some previous comments made in a previous panel, I think was on the healthcare panel, where everyone was talking about the fact that things need to change in healthcare, that it's corrupt, it's inefficient, it's so on and so forth. Everyone was talking about strategies, this and that, but no one was talking about the political solution that is required to change that. We can talk forever about the need to reform the educational system, about the need to reform the healthcare system. None of that will happen with the current political class because it hasn't happened in 25 years. So unless there's a political solution, which means people on these panels and in the audience getting involved and actually doing something, all we'll end up doing is talking regardless of whether we have Facebook or Google or what have you.
So how do you explain then that there are countries in Eastern Europe and in our region, like I can give the examples of Estonia, even Moldova has a center for e-governance, which is very advanced. In Bulgaria, there is a law now that was passed in the parliament to provide citizens with smart identity cards and to allow experimental online voting for the next elections. What makes us special and behind other countries that are also post-communist countries and in our region? Why are we moving slower?
We're not moving slower. You know, the future is here, but it's not equally distributed. You know, as my mentor William Gibson used to say. You know. Actually, if you go to Alba Iulia, it's pretty close. You know, if you go to the city manager's office, you're gonna see a huge, display panel with all the problems signaled by the people in the city, and with the stage that this issue is at this moment. It's okay. So, yeah, the technology is there. You know, people are using it in some parts of the country, but Romania, it's not. It's not a person. It's a conglomerate of mentalities, peoples, etc., etc. And I think that change is happening, We're not, and listen, now we're talking technologies, and there are some specific things. Maybe it's a chip, maybe it's, I don't know, a QR code, maybe it's whatever, an electronic signature. These are details, basically, and implementation details, It's about mentality. Do you want to use it? Do you really want to interact with your citizens? The answer is usually no. Until 2 or 3 years ago, the politicians were closing the Facebook pages after the campaign. It was like, final. The first one the first presidency candidate who kept his page open, I think, was Mircea Joana, if I remember well. And he kept communicating and used it as a channel to promote some values. It was a first from what I observed, And I thought, okay, this is new, this is interesting. Will this lead to more change?
So the idea is that usually the politicians are communicating to the people.
Only during the campaign.
Every 4 years, yes? So
yes.
there is a wall.
Yes.
And don't you think that, the technology could allow them to keep this channel open for in between the electoral cycles and not come to the citizens? It should be also realized by the political class that this is in their direct advantage. Things are changing not only in Romania, like we saw in Bucharest, but in countries like Spain and in other countries where...
Nicu Șordan also closed his page, for like 6 months. He was depressed, for the past elections. Okay, thank you guys. And he had like a lot of donors and fans, and that was not a good move. And
it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Right now he's doing the right thing, Things are changing, like I said,
So my idea was if you don't think that through technology we can...
I don't think so.
This barrier can be broken.
I think it can be if there's a will to do that. I think that will is lacking, and I think the will is lacking because of a low civic education, of low social trust, of low involvement by the electorate in politics. And until that changes, you can have the most amazing technology in the world and nothing will change. You mentioned other countries. Those countries, I believe, are further ahead of us in that regard.
It's about a leap of faith, because it's not easy, it's not comfortable to be open, do you remember the most terrifying words that you were hearing when you were a child? It was, vorbim noi acasă. The idea to talk, for Romanians, to really talk about stuff. It's not necessarily the merriest thing, that you want. So I think it's a leap of faith that everybody must take, even us, because if you want to ask your representative in, I don't know, parliament, how did they decide to vote, for an important law or whatever, you can do it. You can call him, You can get his number from the internet. Technology is helping us with this. Okay, maybe, not in the most legal way to get his mobile phone number, but hey, you can get it. You can text him, until his inbox is full. We did this, for the law they were trying to pass that was trying to deforestate whole Romania and make it, legal and fun, and cool for everybody. And we just spam them, to death and they need new phones after that, or just to clean it up. So this dialogue involves two parts. You can start the dialogue. We started the dialogue.
So I want just to summarize a little bit what we discussed so far. That we agreed that technology can help. That the idea is a political will that exists or does not exist. There are, let's say, cultural factors, like how the people react to this, what is their desire to communicate in public about different issues. I think we can address some questions to the public at the moment. Yeah.
The question is extremely simple. What is political will, where it's coming from? Political will, what it is, where it's coming from, because whatever the discussions about different kind of topics, technology, everything boils down to kind of political will, what it is, in your opinion.
Political will has to do with proper representation, and we don't really have that, I think. Enough of that, let's say, in Romania. Once you have a link between the electorate and what the electorate wants and those empowered by the electorate, that's how you give birth to political will. But in the absence of a political class that responds or that is sensitive to what the electorate wants, and in the absence of alternatives to that, well, then you have a lack of political will.
I don't think the electorate wants something. They want only one thing, a cause. And I don't really see politicians in Romania or around that really have a cause. Yes, I see people that have a cause. Usually it's the cause that I'm really fearing, very nationalistic or, I don't know, extreme orthodox attitudes towards things or whatever. But I don't see like a big cause, like social equity. I want to fight for this. Or, I don't know, the youth, and I gotta give my life to it. And believe me and work with me to this, I think that right now the political will, it's nonsense because there's no political cause, there's no social cause that somebody's really fighting for it, And we cannot expect the civil society to save us on and on and on and on because it has a limited power and a limited attention span. You cannot learn about everything, in real time, It's okay. You don't have to agree, you know. That's it. It's democratic.
I have a question too. It's more of a pragmatic question, I think. Technology is generally used, and the campaigns that you guys worked on are a good example for that. Technology is generally used to empower people, to give them sort of a political efficacy, the idea that they can interact with politics, they can have a say. What happens when politicians who use technology for this means, after the elections or after the campaign, if they get elected, if they don't get elected, start understanding that they can't be as populistic as they are when they're empowering people if they get into politics? Because the circle that is generated by this empowerment, that afterwards you have to be pragmatic when you get into the presidency, when you get into council, when you become a mayor. And you can't be as populistic with a political position. You can't say you're not a politician anymore. Or you can't say you're not a politician. How does that bode into the idea of using technology to empower people and then disappoint them?
Well, it's like the idea is to open a dialogue. You know, you don't have to be perfect. You know, you don't have to do whatever you promise, but you will have to show some progress in what you did, you know, in what you promised. And I think that nobody's doing that. Everything, it ends at a certain moment. We have open consultation. For example, right now we're holding a poll and we're saying, okay, now we go to a beer, to a wine, or tomorrow I'm gonna do some, I don't know, push-ups at home or whatever. And we agree on that, everybody's happy, we see the match afterwards and everything is cool. Okay, I don't really have to do the push-ups, but if I show you a picture of me doing one push-up, you know, you're gonna be pretty happy about my dialogue with you, you know. I think just leave the channel open and try to have, like you say in a startup, you know, a proof of concept first, and then a proof of market, and then, you know. My personal opinion.
Yeah, I'm not sure technology really empowers you necessarily. I think oftentimes it gives you the impression of being empowered, which is a very different thing. And in fact, I think that's one of the downsides of technology. You know, you post something, you've liked or unliked something, and then you say, okay, well, I've done my part. And that's very misleading. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you know, what you're really asking about is what happens when you have to get pragmatic, and how do you interact with the electorate, right? And I think first of all, you have to assume that the electorate, you have to treat the electorate with respect, and you have to explain why you are making a compromise, the logic behind that, and or why you're not making a compromise, and the logic behind that. It doesn't really. It's a communication problem. It's not a problem of technology. And as long as you respect your electorate, I think you'll come out of it okay.
Just a follow-up. Can you be pragmatic and make a compromise if you portray yourself as a savior, as a messiah? Because that's what anti-system, anti-establishment politicians do.
For him.
No, both of you. Both of you.
Don't try to come out of it.
It depends on the compromise. I think there are some compromises that you can make and others that you can't. It's as simple as that. I think that in the particular context that you're talking about, I think the electorate demands less of a compromising attitude. Upon reaching certain goals, I think that electorate will be more flexible in its demands.
I really believe in small victories, you know, for your supporters, you know, because messiahs are not in the administration business. They never were. They're into leading people, you know. So I think if you're doing the right thing and you're walking your talk, through symbolic victories and symbolic gestures, you can keep your people close, even if you're doing compromises on other sides. On the meantime, you don't have a contract of providing services. You're not like a small company, offering electricity and being accountable that, okay, I didn't have service between that hour and that hour. This is not the way it works, for a president or a mayor, You're there to implement some projects. If we're thinking about a president, the projects are social cohesion, respect for education, etc., etc. Okay, you can do some symbolic gesture in these directions. For example, and this was my last, I think, not direct, my last proposal, for the presidency after the campaign ended, and after I returned from Asia, was to put, how do you call this, ramps, in Cotroceni, because they don't have it. Listen, they really don't have it. If you're on a wheelchair, if you try to enter the heart of Bucharest and the heart of our institution, you're like this. You need somebody to, pull you up. And I think this is offensive. This is a small victory, a symbolic victory, a small gesture that shows that you care. Nobody cares necessarily. What do you talk with, a foreign president or whatever, because these are diplomatic questions, but at least, keep your, program in the principle that you propose. I think it's the same for Nicușor-Dan. I don't see Nicușor-Dan being elected and after, cutting down a park, or, closing down schools. I don't think he's really that kind of person. I hope that I'm not wrong,
Any more questions?
Yeah, here. So I have one comment regarding your views on e-voting. Just saying that it also counts on how big you are. So Estonia is a very small country, and another big democracy is India. That is, it has adopted the kind of e-voting, but this is not a solution because information systems are not perfect. Like they can also be corrupted. So I don't think this is a big solution that can be implemented without being piloted and tested, first of all. And my question would be, how do you think in an integrated way, having like this design thinking when you do your online strategy? How do you think of the online involvement strategies and how do you get them offline? Do you think like this or not? How do you get your population offline, to do something offline through the online strategies?
Actually, right now I'm not working on political projects anymore because, yeah, it's not really fun. I'm working for Baia Mare for their bid book for European Capital of Culture, and one of the projects that I'm trying to implement during this year, until we get the verdict of the jury, it's a multi-pass card, for cultural use. Why am I doing this? Because I need to know what's actually the cultural consumption in that city. Nobody knows in Bucharest what are the good days for concerts, what kind of theater do people like, We don't have statistics. We don't have the big data to make the big decision on Paun, The problem with politicians in Romania, beside their lack of intelligence or, empathy or humanity from time to time, is the lack of information. Because they don't know nothing, They're like Jon Snow. They don't have, the books to look, They don't have instant information about what's happening in Vaslui, what's happening in Timișoara, or why the people are, missing the bus in Iași, And this idea, of connecting the online and the offline, I think relies a lot on this big data approach. And you can use it using, cards, access cards, mobile phone, cameras, sensors, an intelligent transport system, etc., etc. So if you want to push, let's say, and to correct maybe, or to intervene, or to try to explore a solution, you know, offline, you know where to start, you know? You have the map with the red dots and the green dots, you know where you should try to implement your pilot, or the places that you should avoid, or the demographics that you're counting on, etc., etc. If you're talking about, I don't know, transmitting a message online that will create action offline, that's pretty easy. Use a call to action, ask people to do something, because usually politicians don't ask people to do something, you know, just say, please come, vote, share, donate, participate, you know. It works usually. It's advertising.
I mean, I think that's the hardest thing to do, right? Is to get the electorate, in a political context using technology, is to get the electorate out of the house and to go and vote your way. And I think that's much more a science rather than an art. And I think the science tells us that it's about emotions. People do things not because it makes sense for them to do so, but because they are driven by the emotional need that drives them, right? And that it can be hate, it can be love, it can be numerous...
Guilt, do not forget guilt.
It can be guilt, it can be indignation, it can be a million different things. But ultimately, it's, again, for me, as I mentioned earlier, technology is just another communication channel through which one can produce these types of emotions and get people to react to those emotions.
I don't know if you have time for more questions. Just we have.
Okay. Thank you for this interesting discussion. One observation in the other panels, the reference to education and the need to get involved in changing the way we educate our future was present. Here it wasn't, so just an observation. And one question, given your experience and the fact that now with this government, we see ministers and prime ministers and secretary of states communicating online so much. What are the chances when the next government will come that they will actually close those accounts and stop this type of communication with the public? What are the risks if they do that?
I think they will continue to use those channels. I just don't know whether they will be. I mean, it depends obviously on who's in power. But I think that parties that tend to speak more to an offline electorate will probably try to continue to keep a dialogue going, or at least to use those channels, but without much success. I mean, in our campaign, our opponents had online campaigns, right? They had content, they were using that channel, they were simply unsuccessful in doing so. And I think it's because of the type of message and it's because of what they represented. You know, they weren't authentic, and I think people wanted authenticity. So if the next government that comes in is authentic in using those channels and is communicating honestly, you know, and you know, it makes a real attempt at communicating and not just, and doesn't just keep that channel open for the sake of saying, hey, I have a Facebook page or something, then that will be something meaningful. But I'm skeptical that they will actually put that effort in there.
I think that things are changing in the good direction, because right now, even in the administration, you know, people are not living in silos anymore, you know. So there are not people who only know how to, I don't know, manage or to do accounting or whatever. So I think that everybody is pretty much multi-skilled, you know. So I think that even if the really, let's say, temporary executive part of the government, you know, institution, it's temporary and they have a very short amount of time and they're understaffed, like really understaffed, you know, they're gonna keep this open. If not, we can also pressure them to keep them open. And we can start with a like on the ministry that we're really interested in. And to make a quick link with the education, team, if you have kids, I don't know, teach them how to code, or it's going to be very important pretty soon.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes?
So back to the idea of politicians and their online followers, I was thinking actually at the Indian Prime Minister and his presence online, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, he has giant numbers of followers, whatever, on every channel imaginable. But he also has a team that is, for example, going after the people that are making fun of him on Twitter. So he would never say something, I mean, he would never answer back to someone criticizing him, but there are actually, I think East Lansing, Michigan University is doing a research on the fact that actually people that are criticizing the Prime Minister are getting a lot of hate online for the time being. So my question for both of you would be, what is the extent of responsibility of a political leader when it comes to generating this kind of emotion that we all hope are going to be used for a positive change, but can also go in very strange ways?
I don't think there's anything new in that. I mean, I think beforehand, they simply would have chosen different channels. They might have made fun of someone on TV, or they might have urged their followers to make fun of XYZ in a newspaper article. Now we simply have another channel. The moral dilemmas are the same. I don't think that has changed any.
I think that if you have an organic community, around your political brand and your online political presence, and it's organic, it's not forced, it's not made out of people who don't really understand how internet works. If you really understand how internet works, this kind of moderation, this kind of trolling control, it's gonna be taken care of by your community, not by your, online gang who tries to protect you. That's, let's say, an official branch of yourself. Because I don't really think that that's an organic, organized community, of his fans and followers. I think that's a little bit encouraged and instrumented from what I've read about it. Maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong, or?
I was just curious whether you think there is a moral responsibility that was all, be it organic or unorganic or whatever. I was more interested about the morality of it.
If, you're making the rules of the game, on your page and on your online community. If you're promoting hate and aggressivity, yes, for sure, you're morally responsible. If you're trying to be ethical about it and to moderate it, yeah.
I just want to ask if we passed our 45 minutes or not. I don't know. I haven't looked. Yes? Okay. So we can conclude with that. Thank you. And yeah.